Chapter 2, True Success Comes Without Fighting. Always think progress. When I first held a copy of The Art of War, I was surprised at how light it was. Despite the countless volumes of books derived from Sun Tzu's insights, The Art of War itself is only 6,000 words long. But I bet I can do better than Sun Tzu. I can summarize his 6,000 words with just a single phrase: think progress. They say that the only things guaranteed in life are death and taxes. But I would add one more item to that list and say that you're also guaranteed to experience failure. It's part and parcel of standing up on stage and putting yourself out there. You might give a bad presentation, you might get fired from your job, you might lose your house to unexpected fires, or you might mess up your lifetime relationship with your wife for one fleeting moment of euphoria. But unless you want to live on a remote Scottish island in isolation, this is what it feels like to be alive. We're not going to succeed or win all the time. What matters is that no matter where we currently are or what we've been through, we continue to strive for progress. Here's why Sun Tzu values progress over success. Success is something that can be created. It can be created through perseverance. It can be created through well-thought-out planning, and it can be created by influencing the people around us. Progress is the driving force behind all of that. Life is not a given. It's fluid and dynamic and includes all the other empowering transformational buzzwords we use today. But we give up all hope if we stop believing in progress. There's something in the moment when we're lying comfortably in bed, debating with ourselves about whether we should get up earlier to hit the gym. There's also something in that moment when an addict chooses to turn themselves into a rehab center for help rather than continue living the same way. What matters more? How successful they currently are, or their decision to fight for progress. Progress is the goal, get it? When we're constantly thinking about progress, outcomes don't matter as much anymore. Progress isn't a zero-sum game. I find babies fascinating little creatures because they need to learn how to be a human from scratch. They need to learn everything from how to move, speak, and blow their nose to more complex concepts like becoming aware of who they are. Actually, I think that last point is also something that I'm still working on. Babies don't realize that they're separate from other objects and beings in the world until they start touching, kicking, and grabbing them. Then, generally, by the early age of 2, they will have developed a strong identity and a sense of self, which they often assert by using the phrase "it's mine" as much as possible. Perhaps it's because of this strong attachment to our identities early on in life that we can't quite get rid of the belief that whenever we give, we must also lose. But this can't be any more wrong, because for most of us, life isn't a game where our enemies have to die so that we can live. Success has nothing to do with fighting or eliminating our enemies, because life isn't a zero-sum game. Suppose that we were champions on the battlefield, managing to decisively defeat all opponents who dared to challenge us without breaking a sweat. Were we successful? By some measures, sure. But what if each of those victories came at an unreasonable cost of time, resources, or manpower? What if those battles bankrupted the country? We could claim mission accomplished, but we'd eventually have to repay our debts. Sun Tzu thought of success only in terms of the net benefit gained. Our investment of resources must be met with an appropriate level of return. Otherwise, what was the point of taking the risk? It wasn't a question of did we win, but rather by how much. And was it worth it? More astute readers would now realize that our biggest victories are therefore those that came without fighting at all, because these gains are risk-free. In today's language, we might call these win-win scenarios, where we gain more than what we otherwise would have by working together, rather than both diving head-first toward mutually assured destruction. We might call this a win-win scenario, but in classic Sun Tzu fashion, this didn't go far enough. A win-win scenario implies that the other person was still working toward their own goals. You might not be fighting each other in hand-to-hand combat anymore, but the other person is still there trying to pursue their own interests. What if you could recruit them to your cause instead? What if they joined and fought for your team? A man once told his friend that he really hated his colleague and wanted to get rid of him. "I swear to you, one day I will destroy him," he frequently complained. But a few months later, his friend saw him happily joking and laughing together with his enemy. The friend pulled him aside and asked, "Isn't that the person you swore to eliminate? Why are you two hanging out together? He is, and I did get rid of him. He's not my enemy anymore. He's my friend." Winning isn't about fighting. What would happen if we could exterminate an enemy by making them our friend? Sun Tzu not only believed that it was possible, he thought of that as the benchmark for success. He called it subduing the enemy without fighting, the ability to win over entire cities or populations without a single drop of blood. Don't eliminate enemies through violence and trickery. Eliminate them using the wisdom to persuade and change minds. A common misconception about the art of war is that it's only about fighting and tactics for warmongering. But Sun Tzu didn't believe in fighting. Fighting was only to be used as a last resort, and you fought when you absolutely needed to. You fought only when you had a high probability of winning, because fighting battles, even if you won, would come at a cost of resources and energy. Chinese history is littered with examples of leaders who consistently won battles but ended up losing everything. During the 4-year war between the Western Chu and Han kingdoms, the leader of Western Chu, Xiangyu, never lost a single battle. From when he started fighting at the age of 27 to his death at 35, he continued to defeat all his foes on the battlefield. But where did that leave him? It left him dead at the bank of the Wu River. He chose to unceremoniously commit suicide using his own sword rather than be captured by the hordes of soldiers on his tail. Lu Bang, the leader of the opposing Han kingdom, consistently lost battles against Xiangyu, but won the war and founded the Han dynasty because he knew how to persevere and charm the people around him. The Han dynasty would rule for the next 400 years. I know it's hard to avoid the temptation of judging our success through immediate outcomes. As innately social creatures, we're constantly looking for markers to appraise our success, whether it's that new car, a new job, or a new title. But the question we ought to ask ourselves is, what did we have to pay for that little piece of success? Mind you, it's worth being truthful to ourselves here, because we'll know when we've been too short-sighted or when we've sacrificed too much for too little gain. We can fool others, but we can't fool ourselves. Changing destiny in 200 words or less. Zheng was a small state in central China during the Zhou dynasty, which was surrounded by 2 larger states that had formed an alliance against it. What are we going to do? Qin has us surrounded, and even its king has personally come to battle. Zheng's ruler paced around the room frantically, giving disapproving glances to the assembly of counselors that had come to advise him. We cannot fight. We must send a great negotiator instead. That is our best hope. Meeting them in battle will surely be the end of us. The room knew who he was referring to, but no one seemed to think too highly of the idea. Zheng's king was referring to Zhu, one of his old advisers. But now, even with the king at his doorstep, Ziwu refused to see him. Ziwu complained, "When I was younger, I was not as good as the others, and now that I am old, I am surely even more useless than before. Why have you come for my help?" Ziwu obviously had a bone to pick with the king, but luckily, unlike most other rulers, Zheng's king had the humility to try and meet Ziwu halfway. "My dear teacher, I was a fool for not valuing your advice before, and now we have a desperate need for you to come back. I did not value your advice before, and that was wrong. But now your country needs you, and if we get overrun, there will be no benefit to you or your family." That night, under the cover of darkness, Ziwu snuck out of the city and into the encampment of the Qin army. His exchange with Qin's king, an exchange of less than 200 words, altered the nature of the war completely. Ziwu said to the Qin king, "Look at the 2 large kingdoms surrounding my very small country. My country is surely doomed. Although I fear for the future of my country, I hesitated to come see you because I was not sure I was worthy of your time. Zhu was on his knees, bowing as low as he could with his forehead firmly touching the ground. He wanted the king to believe that he and his country were humble and weak, so weak that the king would feel pity for him. Zhu continued, "My country is separated by many miles from yours. It doesn't even share a border with yours, yet you join forces with another to attack us. Even if you defeat us and succeed in splitting my country into two, it will be difficult for you to govern your half of the country. We would only be a little satellite nation for you. On the other hand, the other aggressor, your supposed ally, could easily expand to incorporate their half of my country as we share a border with them. But of course, my king, you know this already." Zhu paused for dramatic effect, but then continued to speak. "Of course, you already know that it will be difficult to govern your half of my country from a distance. And you also know that we are so small you would gain little from your conquest." Zhu's flattery was out in full force, but in truth he knew that the king had not thought about what he was hearing. If he had, he would not have bothered to come. But the king, to prevent himself from looking like a fool, continued to nod and nod some more. "My king, because you have come all this way, you must have your own reasons as to why attacking my small remote country is a good idea. You must have your thoughts on the advantages and benefits to you. Maybe then, it's something that we can provide to you without conflict. If you agree to turn around, we will become your ally. We will voluntarily allow you to use our country as a forward base. You will not have the worry of trying to govern a remote nation, and you will receive all the benefits of having a remote outpost. This is almost the same as obtaining the land yourself." The king was drawn to the proposition. It was a chance for him to get out of the situation while still saving face. "You know as well as I that the other country cannot be trusted. They are aggressive and have ambitions without bounds. Today they are trying to take my country, but tomorrow they will try and take yours because we will no longer be an obstacle to them. By removing my country, you make it easier for them to invade Qin." Zhu had no clue as to whether this was true, but he was hot on the path of dividing the alliance. At that moment, the king went into a mode of panic and then anger. Of course it was true, he reasoned. Why else did they propose the alliance? "Speak no more," the king said. "Not only will I no longer invade your country, I will leave part of my army here to help you defend your borders." Without an army or a single soldier, Zhu had subdued the enemy and strengthened the position of his own country. True success comes without song. Some people don't believe that Sun Tzu existed. They believe that the art of war was written by an anonymous writer during the later Warring States period. This writer then backdated the book to give it additional credibility. Now, I'm not a historian, so I don't know whether that's true, but what I do know is that it's been hard to learn about Sun Tzu because there don't seem to be many records written about him. There's almost no written record about who Sun Tzu was outside of the art of war. But this also makes perfect sense. A leader who understands the art of war should have no reputation, no legends, and no stories told about them. There shouldn't be songs about them overcoming armies 10 times their size, or stories about them turning the tide of a battle. For the simple fact that these are leaders who do not put themselves in these positions in the first place. These leaders would either not fight or only fight when winning was very easy. Success through fighting was not something to be admired. The most brilliant leaders I know are those who know how to pick their battles. They know when to fight, when not to fight, and when to run. It takes a particularly strong man or woman to know when to admit defeat and retreat. They know that admitting defeat will mean that they'll live to fight another day. They're preserving their strength, and more importantly, the lives of their followers. The First World War took the lives of millions of young men, but was it worth it? Who was truly victorious? Russia paid for victory through the blood of its men, and she never fully recovered. As leaders, whether on the battlefield or in the office, we must take on the responsibility for the lives of those who choose to follow us, and we must never take that responsibility lightly.